Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. I am super excited about today because not only did I read the book in 2 days, I just couldn't put this book down, but it's an honor to actually speak to this beautiful woman. She's an author. She's a best-selling author of a book called Walk Beside Me, which is amazing. And the link will be available in my podcast. She's also a motivational speaker. She's a Fox radio announcer. She's a humanitarian around the world, but also she was a supermodel or, national and international model, but I think she's a supermodel. But I think she's a superstar because when I read her story, and I think it is about her story, I was really touched on how amazing this woman is who went through breast cancer. So with having said that, welcome, Christine.
Hi, so happy to be here, all the way from Miami, Florida.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, say that again because I cut you out.
I said I'm happy to be here all the way from Miami, Florida.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for letting us know. Can you see this is our winter attire that what I'm wearing here today.
I'm all summer attire.
I know, but Miami are the place of so many amazing people. Our mentor, Tony Robbins, is in Miami or in Florida.
Yes.
So every time he mentions it, don't worry, I get upset about that too. But he's amazing. But yeah, I want to, first of all, yes. So as I said, I didn't get to ask you this, and I think this is real when I asked this question, but I did read this book and I wanted to know how much of this book is based on Christine. Like we're talking 10%, 20%, 99.9%.
It's actually very accurate. We changed the cities and the names. That's about it. So, and we did that just to protect a few people. But in general, the story is my own. In fact, I hired an independent company to help me with, the accuracy of it. And so we took interviews from 28 of the people that helped me. And we took those transcripts and we put it also into the book, meaning every email that is in the book, every text that's in the book is actually that's real. Yeah.
Wow. That's what I mean. It was just, it's just so amazing because, you start the book, and I don't want to give too much away, but you start the book on one part of your journey in life. Right. And then you go, it was like, wow. And then you go on to another part of your journey in life and you're thinking, oh, no, this can't be happening to this, this amazing woman. It can't be happening. And then the third part happens and you're like, I know that we say that our problems are never as big as anyone else's because there's someone who's got bigger problems or someone who's got smaller problems than us. But it's quite funny how you say that if we all put our own, problems in a jar, you'd take your own back. And I thought it's crazy how this is just so, this is amazing how you've gone through all of these things and you've come out on the other end. Yeah. And I think, wow.
Thank you.
And that's why I love reading books like this. It's not just the book. For me, it's like you told me your story. You told me your story. And I had a feeling that, of course, you've changed names and things like that for the privacy. But when it was funny because I was telling my husband, I'm reading it and I'm like, at one stage I'm reading the book and I'm saying to my husband, oh, this can't be happening to this poor lady. This can't be real. This can't be real because it was just so touching. But obviously we're here to talk about the last part of your journey, which was, diagnosed with breast cancer. So if you want to just sort of talk a little bit about that, obviously, you say that you felt something and going forward from there. So just share your story.
Okay. Well, we could be here all night, but I'll share a little bit.
Good. Yeah.
So the beauty, I think, of my book and the beauty of my story is that I'm very vulnerable in sharing it. And what I mean by that is so often we say, oh, yeah, I've been diagnosed with cancer and look at all these people that helped me. And it's such a beautiful tale. But we don't really share the really intimate parts where it's really messy and really muddy and really uncomfortable and very vulnerable. And so I feel like by me and my storytelling with it in the book or on social media and interviews and however I can, And the reason people resonate is because their stories are messy. Their stories are painful. And it takes somebody like me, I think, as a public figure and somebody that was completely addicted to what they look like, because I was a model my whole life, to lose my identity and to rebound from that with this, I call it post-traumatic wisdom, where it didn't take me, right? And there were moments in my book and in my journey where I thought it would, not just from chemotherapy, but, from my arm and the bully that the doctor and just from the dysfunction that I was living in and the pain, the suffering after suffering. And I think that's also unique of my story, is because it wasn't just breast cancer. I was going through two traumatic events at the same time. So I was basically scheduling chemos between arm surgeries and mastectomies between arm surgeries. And, I was faced with almost losing my right arm because of a doctor's, malpractice. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer, which is what I think you were referring to in the beginning of the podcast, is I was desperate. Because my life was dependent on external. My life was dependent on what people could see. And my life wasn't rooted in what was inside, which was who I was. And I didn't even know who I was. And so it really forced me, right? When you lose your hair and you lose your identity. And for me, I lost my career at the time, which was modeling. And you really have to look inside and go, wait, who am I? And that was a really scary process for me because I had no idea. And I was 40 years old. And I also I didn't have any contemporaries that had breast cancer. It came out of nowhere. I didn't have the gene. I didn't have any genetic predisposition for it. And so it was it was like a terrifying journey for me in so many ways. And I was in pain from my arm. And so, that really pushed me against a wall that I was like not willing to rebound from. And so when you get pushed against a wall you're not willing to rebound from, you have to go through some really emotional gymnastics. And for me, it was like trying to climb out of, a tunnel by myself. And at the time, I was also very prideful in a way that I didn't want to ask for help because I thought I wasn't worthy of help. And I think most of my issues in my life were dependent on self-esteem issues. So you have to read the book to figure out what I'm talking about my arm. But when that doctor was bullying me with my arm, I should have seen a second doctor, but my self-esteem was wrapped up into, oh no, he's the authority. He's the one, he went to medical school. I didn't. I trusted authority and I trusted them over myself. And I think that's one fatal mistake we make as women in particular. And because we're taught that we have to trust authority, and authority is a medical doctor. And so I dismissed my own feelings, and that stems from self-esteem. And once I started to go through chemotherapy and I had people stand up for me and stand for me, which is a courage net.
Yeah.
We all have to have a certain amount of courage, but we can't depend on only our courage. But if you have people in your camp and you have people that are, walking through journeys with you, that's called a courage net. At least that's what I call it.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to teach people now. Like you can, especially during COVID, like we can try to get through this by ourselves, but it ain't going to happen.
Absolutely.
We're going to have those desperate thoughts. We're going to have those suicidal feelings. It's like, but the pride, the self-esteem is what trips us up. And so I not only rebuilt my self-esteem, but my friends, by walking through this journey with me, they rebuilt my self-esteem. They poured into me. And so my best advice for people, and I preach this all the time, and if you follow me on social media, I say it every single day. Lean into somebody today. Text somebody today. Write to somebody today. Call somebody today. FaceTime somebody today, because you don't know what moments people are in, and people are desperate. And we may look like we're not, and we may put on this fake facade, which I did for 41 years. But that's just a self-esteem issue too.
Yeah.
When we care more about what society thinks of us, than what we think of us, that's a self-esteem issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. So that's why, so really listening to your story where you say, and it's, where you say the doctor, I'm all about get a second opinion. I'm screaming at the book, get a second opinion.
It's a tragedy. No, my arm is a tragedy. And also I live in chronic pain. I've been in pain for 10 years because of it. And so it's a daily reminder to me.
Wow.
But that's the other thing. Like, we have to heal ourselves. And without my faith, I don't know how I would have ever forgiven this person, because I don't want to carry that backpack. I don't want to carry him and the anger of what he did to me into my daily life. And so I forgave him a long time ago, because that's a burden for me. You know, when we carry that kind of anger and that hostility, that's a burden. The only person it hurts is us.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But like you said, you know, I'm not going to, I don't sit here and talk evil of doctors that have done me wrong or anything like that, because you know what? Like you said in the beginning, this is someone who, when they studied, they did the courses, they did all the years of, you know, becoming a doctor, and they know better than us.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you go to a doctor's office and they say, oh, you know, well, who's the doctor, you or me? Well, you know what? Sometimes the patient is the doctor, because
absolutely,
you know your body. Yeah, you know, you know your body more than anyone. You know, and that's what was amazing. So with, you said that, okay, so you did the chemo, you called it the Red Devil, which was the first time I heard that name. Was it the Red Devil? Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Now, I've actually interviewed another lady who, not just one, but so many people, because I didn't do chemo myself or radiation. But what happened with so many women I speak to, they do mention the first 4 are just lethal. Grace, you don't understand. They kill you. Da, 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 da. But it was the first time you actually named it something. And I thought, oh, that must be that one that they all talk about, you know? So if you want to sort of talk a little bit about that, if it's okay. So how did you go through that?
Oh, that's a very good question. So again, I went through it with another illness at the same time. And so my arm and the infection in my arm that had been in my arm for 7 months before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was already, my hair was thinning and I was losing weight. And it was because my body was trying to fight this infection that was undiagnosed. And so when I went into chemo, I was so depleted because of this infection in my arm that, actually, let me go back. I had to postpone. I didn't postpone. My doctors postponed chemo for a month, 1 month, because the bone grafts and the cadaver bone in my arm would have dissolved. And so my right arm would have literally had to be taken off, because my right arm is a bone graft. It's an Achilles, a cadaver Achilles tendon. It's a cadaver bone, and it's also got bone grafts. And so to postpone chemotherapy, like, I wanted the cancer out, right? And then for somebody to say to you, you can't even start chemotherapy because you have this infection and we have to get rid of that first. It's shocking, because you want to go into this mode of like, get it out, get it out, get it out. And then to stop and pause was a whole nother, like, gigantic barrier for me throughout my journey. And so once I was able to start chemotherapy, my body was so depleted already that I really struggled through not just the first 4, but there were 3 or 4 nights where I wasn't, not right in the beginning, but 1 month into it or 2 months into it or 3 months into it, where I was afraid that I wasn't going to wake up the next morning.
Wow.
Now, I went through chemotherapy for 15 months.
Yes. Wow.
15 months is a long time.
Wow. But can I ask, what stage were you diagnosed at?
I was 2, level 3. So it was the most aggressive. But my tumor was, I think, 2.4 on the scale. So
it was on one, your left, wasn't it?
Side, left, yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then, so you did the chemo, and then after you had to, so you've gone through 15 months of chemo. I'm just trying to understand, like, as I said, because I could talk about me till the cows come home, but it's not going to help my listeners and my viewers. But why is it that after you did the chemo, they decided to do the mastectomy?
Well, so when I was diagnosed with cancer and I was trying to buy some time to start chemo, they did a lumpectomy right away. But because my cancer was so aggressive, I had a choice. I could either do a mastectomy or radiation. So I could have left the lumpectomy alone. but then I would have had to do radiation. And I didn't want to do radiation. I wanted to do the mastectomy. And it's just a personal choice.
Yep.
And so I did the mastectomy. I did chemo, and then I did the mastectomy after chemo. And then eventually I did the other side because I was trying to be proactive so that it didn't go to the other side. But I don't think you know this about my story. Last year, especially since you just read the book, so last summer, about a year, well, actually 2 years ago.
Yeah.
In 2006, let me go back. In 2016, I had the other side mastectomy. And so they went in and they put these new implants in. And the implants were supposed to adhere to the skin because when you have an empty breast cavity, those implants, they move around and they hurt. Well, at least they hurt me. And so in 2016, they had these new implants and they were rigid and they would, adhere to the skin and it wouldn't be so uncomfortable. And it helped a lot with the pain. But unfortunately, those implants were recalled because they were causing breast cancer. And so in 2019, I got a phone call from my plastic surgeon. I'm driving down the street going to pick up my son from school. And my plastic surgeon goes, well, I know we haven't talked in 4 years, but we have to take those implants out. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, the FDA they recalled them. You don't have to do it right now. You can wait some time. And so I waited until my son graduated from high school. And that was a year. And after my son graduated from high school and he was in college, I thought, okay, I can do it now. I can swap him out. It's not going to be a big deal. So I had the surgery and they removed the breast implants that were recalled and they replaced them with normal breast implants. And I loved my implants. I thought it was one of the prizes of breast cancer. I was like, my breasts weren't very pretty to begin with. And so this is nice. I like them. They don't move and they're the right size. And I didn't go bigger, but they were just pretty. And so during that surgery where they swapped them out, I got an infection. And I was on antibiotics for a couple months and that seemed to make the infection go away. And then in March of 2020, when COVID hit and the whole world shut down, I woke up one day and I went for a walk because I walk every day. And I sat down after my walk and I was working on my computer because I work all the time. And I felt this little itch in my left breast. And I was like, I totally ignored it. And about 2 hours later, it felt like there was bees stinging my breast.
Oh, wow.
And so I went into my closet and I took off my sweaty clothes and I looked at my breast and my breast, just the left breast, was bright red. It's like a red apple. And so I texted a picture of my breast to my oncologist and to my breast surgeon. Both of them called me immediately and said, get to the hospital and don't stop at red lights. So I drive myself to the emergency room. Now there's nobody in the hospital at the time because first of all, they have like a door with a person that's blocking the door to get into the emergency room because they've called off all elective surgeries in the entire United States. And there's nobody there. And everybody's looking at me like, does she have COVID? They say to me at the front door, they're like, oh, do you have a fever? I was like, probably. And they're like, well, do you feel sick? A little. But I knew I didn't have COVID, but they're asking ridiculous questions. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to take up my shirt and show you what's going on under here, but you need to let me in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I finally get in and my surgeon met me there and he admitted me immediately and I had a staph infection. I was in the hospital for 5 days, 5 days, 5 days in a hospital where they had COVID patients. Never got COVID.
Touch wood.
Oh my gosh. It was crazy because I go to school too. I'm getting my master's degree at Harvard. I had a presentation I had to do that week that I was in the hospital. And so I did it from the hospital room. I also had a speaking event that I was a keynote speaker for. I did it from my hospital bed. So my life continued, even though I was in the hospital for a staph infection, because what are you going to do? Like after all the illnesses I've had, you can either completely shut down, which most people probably would have, or you can just keep going and go, okay, well, I have an IV in my arm and I've got an infection, but I'm still going to do this presentation. I'm still going to be the keynote speaker. I'm not quitting on myself. And so they sent me home with a PICC line. I don't know if you know what a PICC line is, but it's super uncomfortable. But it gave me the option of leaving the hospital after 5 days. So so for 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I had a nurse at my house who was putting the IV antibiotics in. So fast forward to about a month after that. So the end of April now the world is even more shut down and people are more upset about COVID and everybody's confused by it and scared. And the same thing happened to me. I literally went for a walk. I came back from my walk and it was like this massive bees stinging my breast. And I go into my closet and I'm like so mad. I go in my closet and I lift up my shirt and I was like, like what? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. So I text a picture to same story. I go to the hospital. I drive myself to the emergency room. I'm in the hospital again for 4 days. Same exact scenario 1 month later. They let me out of the hospital with antibiotics. Now fast forward to June, where the world is even more shut down, even more afraid.
Yeah.
And I still haven't gotten COVID, although I've been in the hospital now for 10 days. Now fast forward to June, and I had traveled to go see my son, who I hadn't seen since COVID. And I'm flying back to Miami, and I just don't feel well. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just tired. It's been a long travel day. And I get home, and I dump my luggage at the door. And I'm thinking to myself, I never dump my luggage at the door. And I'm not even looking at my phone. And I'm sure I have hundreds of emails and things that I have to attend to. And I'm not even looking at my phone. And all of a sudden I go into my bathroom because I want to take a shower. Because, when you feel mucky from the airplane and things like that and having a mask on all day. So I'm walking towards the shower and I'm trying to take off my shirt. And I feel my shirt is sticking to my chest.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I can't believe I sweat this much on the airplane. This is weird. And so then I go to the other side, my right side, and there's no sweat. And I think to myself, well, this is a little weird. In the meantime, I'm starting to feel a lot sicker. So I pull off my shirt and now I see this green pus dripping down my chest, all the way to my shoes. And what had happened was that infection from months, had turned into a MRSA infection and had eaten a hole out of my breast through my skin.
Oh, wow.
So I literally texted a picture to my oncologist and to my breast surgeon, and my oncologist FaceTime me because she wanted to see what I look like. And she FaceTime me and she's looking at me from her living room and she goes, I'm going to send an ambulance because I guess I was shockingly ill. And she said, I'm going to send an ambulance. And I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. I am so tired of you guys telling me that I'm fine and sending me home when I'm doing the work. I'm in the hospital, I'm taking the antibiotics and I'm doing everything you tell me to do. And then you send me home and tell me I'm fine. And now this is the third time. So ultimately I got over my pity party and I went to the hospital, and that was a Monday night at 7 p.m. Within 5 hours, I could not lift my head up from the pillow. I couldn't even open my eyes. I was so sick. I had 104 fever, and they wheeled me back. They wheeled me back into the operating room. And before they wheeled me back into the operating room, one of the nurses put these papers in front of me and she said, sign this. And I kind of opened my eyes enough to look, and it said mastectomy, left side. And I was like, I can't be having a mastectomy. I already had breast cancer. I've already had a mastectomy. And she goes, just sign it. It's just for insurance reasons. And I was like, I was too sick to say to her, that's a label and I'm not going to accept that label from you. And be careful how you label people. But I was too sick to say anything.
Yeah.
They wheeled me back into the the operating room, and they extracted both of everything, my chest, everything, the cavity wall, the implant, which was soaked in infection, and I could have lost my life. So that was a year ago. And so so if you see my chest, like there's no implants, there's no nothing, it's concave. Yeah. And so now now a lot of the interviews I've been doing are talking about like, how do you feel so comfortable just prancing around Miami Beach with a tight shirt on? Because people that are in this position aren't as comfortable as I am. But I'm like, listen, I'm unshakable in my self-esteem. I'm whole. Yeah. And whatever this looks like, I'm good with that. It's not my first choice. It's not what I signed up for, but this is what I look like. And I'm not going to be ashamed of who I am, or what I look like, because society thinks I should look different. And so we have to just I think that judgment goes back to our heart, for one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the second thing is comparison is the root of damaging your self-esteem.
Absolutely.
It's the root of damaging your self-esteem. And when we compare ourselves to others in daily life, on social media, in anybody's journey, like, well, she suffered more than me, or I suffered more than her, or she had chemo, or she had whatever, that's comparison.
Absolutely.
That will strangle you.
Mm.
And I really want to make sure your listeners know you have to work on that.
And I agree 10,000
other people.
Yeah. And I agree with you, because that's exactly what I say to people. Don't look at someone else's story, because it's not yours. It's not yours.
You don't have any idea. Like, you not look at me and say, she's had 28 rounds of chemo. She's had 23 non-elective surgeries. She's in chronic pain. She was you can't, you wouldn't know that.
No.
And so you can't judge somebody because you just don't know.
Absolutely.
And you don't know how they got there. And you don't know how they got through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask them. Ask them. If you want to know, ask. Yeah. Don't assume. I always say that. Don't assume. But I also, like you said, that's the thing why I speak to people like yourself, because don't look at me. I'm one story. But there's this story, this story, this story, this story, this story, because I want the listeners and the viewers to really think about, there is, like I say also as well, and I'm sure you did too, your breast cancer, if there was someone else who went through the same, or when I say the same, they went through also 15 months of chemo, it's so chalk and cheese to yours. So I always say that, don't compare your story, your journey to someone else's. Learn from them.
Yeah.
Take the tools, take the resources, but don't compare yourself, you know? So like you said, and the thing is that's just, wow. I'm so glad that you're here with us after that last 12 months. You know what I mean? I really do. Personally, I really think, wow, that, because like you said, you can have courage, but every time life is knocking you, I call it the curveball. It's like life throws another curveball. How are you going to handle it? How are you going to handle it? So having said all of this, when you look at who you were before in your life and who you are now, what are the things that you took from your old life, and what are the things that you left behind, other than the obviously the external part, like we were saying, what you're going through? But like you said, you put labels without you don't know my story,
right?
So going back to that question, so what did you have in your last, the life before all of this, and also the life now? What did you leave behind, and what did you sort of change?
Well, I think it's just been such an evolution of figuring out who I am. And now that I'm 50, and I went through breast cancer 9 years ago. I went from really just not knowing who I was. So it's not that I would ever discount who I was. I just didn't know who I was. And so what I left behind was a lot of that labels. Like, I was attached to those labels. I was attached to the address, like the physical address. Like, I wanted to live in a certain place, and I wanted to carry a certain bag, and I wanted to have certain labels in my closet, and I wanted to have certain friends, and all those things that I was like climbing for, that were so fleeting and emptying. And so my soul was searching for what mattered in life and what was important. And I couldn't figure it out, because I was like, well, I was the guest model. I was on this billboard. I was, in this magazine, and I was all over the, modeled in Europe and things like that. And I thought, why isn't that filling me up? Why doesn't that make me feel good about myself? And it's because that stuff doesn't. It's temporary. It's fleeting. That's not going to give me my self-worth. I mean, if you praise money, you can never have enough money. If you praise beauty, you'll never be as beautiful as you want. And so when I started to be rooted in faith and have this different self-esteem and different tape recorder that was going on in my head, like what I was saying to myself, then I was able to really figure out who was I and what did life mean for me. And so for me, I went from being very self-serving without even filling myself up, to very serving. And so now what I do is, I'm a humanitarian. All I want to do is serve. I want to help other people. And going back, one thing I do want to touch on, going back to talking about like how we had a community of people, there are so many people that don't. But here's what people can do. When I was going through chemo and I was sitting in that chemo chair week after week, I saw people that didn't have somebody. So you know what I did? I would go over with my, with the port and the medicine going in me, and I would take it and sit next to somebody else. And so walking through our daily life every single day, we see people out on the street. We see people that need somebody to say hi to them. And we can serve every day in so many different capacities. It doesn't have to be, what we think about serving. It could just be like walking down the street and saying hello and how are you, and actually paying attention to people. That's really what matters. And so, I am a humanitarian. I'm on the board of these companies and I'm doing a lot of great work, but in my day-to-day walk, I'm trying to help as many people as humanly possible, because I know at the end of the day, tomorrow's promised to nobody. But if I can help people each day, and when my time is up, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I agree with you, because the thing is, like you said, we had a business, we grew it and things like that. So like you said, we had the cars, I had the handbags, I had the jewelry, I had all of this stuff. But one thing that I am so grateful that I did then too was I was giving to charities, not because of brownie points. I just happened to learn from a mentor that he said, if you've got the money, give 10% of your pay or whatever it was. So I had this thing automatically going off in the background, so to speak. So when I lost everything, and I'll never forget, I get an email, and saying, oh, look, Grace, you've donated X amount. This is where your money's going, because it's part of Kiva. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. Kiva is something like a third world countries where people who need, their scooters, motors broken, they need $200. It may take them 5 years to pay that back, but it's things like that. But what I was doing is, when they were paying it back, I was like, wow, and I still do this today, but I thought, wow, isn't it interesting? And I'll get to the point why I'm saying it in a minute, but I'm thinking, oh, this person paid me back. This person needs some money. I'm going to give this money to that person. So it's like, if you want to talk about karma, it's like it's their karma. And I'm just the bank teller doing the transaction, right? So I'm giving goodness back to that person. So they're paying it forward to someone else. The reason I say this is because when I went through my own diagnosis and everything on my own breast cancer, it could have gone anyway. It could have gotten worse and whatever like that. And then I thought to myself, maybe I've been doing good so far, even a little bit, that I mean, we don't say it because, my husband is a Buddhist, but we don't say it because that's karma in itself and it's bad. But you don't go, I'm doing this because I can get good brownie points. But part of my brain thought, have I been looked after because I looked after, I served? So did Spirit, God, look after me because I was already in some unconscious way serving others? But now, like you said, I'm serving. So it's, to me, it was more of it. So if someone left with a smile after I've planted a seed, and I'm sure you think the same way.
Yes.
That, to me, I would come home days and my husband will go, how did you go? And I'm like, oh my God, I had an amazing day. And he's like, wow, did you sell so much? And I'm like, no, you know what I did? And he saw that. And he thought, that is who you are.
That's
that
joy.
Is who you are. Yeah.
That's joy.
And exactly. And no amount of money can put a price on it. None.
Yeah. I always like to say that I was happy in my previous life, I'm 40, but I have felt joy since then. So those are that's definitely the difference.
Absolutely. And I agree, because the thing is, it's a different happiness, because you hear about, like, to be happy, you have to make yourself happy. No one else can make you happy.
Yeah.
However, to make yourself happy, it's to help others. Now, excuse my cat.
Well, and I do really believe that, in life, when I was living in the world of the modeling world, it was very transactional. And so, like, you do this for me and I'll do this for you. If a photographer had a new client, he would say, well, if you do these pictures for me, I'll get you this client. and it was all very transactional.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought that's how I thought the world lived, right? And that's how I thought the world worked, in all industries. And it turns out it doesn't, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't do anything for anybody to get anything back. I do it if I want to serve, and if I don't want to do it, I don't do it.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's also rooted in self-love, in my own self journey. And I think part of my success within myself is being able to say no to certain things because I have the confidence to say no, right? I mean, I could go back into that transactional world all day long, you know, and it just, it's not serving me, and it's not serving anybody, actually.
No, that's so right. Because in my background, I was in finance for more than 20 years. But when I remember when I was in construction with my husband, you know, because I've hurt myself, I tore my ACL. I didn't want to go into corporate world, I call it. So my husband said, work in our office at construction.
Yeah.
And I remember going into the city of Melbourne. And I mean, I did this for 20 years, more than 20 years. I used to go into the city to work. I remember being there, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, thank goodness I'm not doing that. Now, fast forward to when I got diagnosed. And like I said before, we lost our company.
Right.
We lost everything. But at the same time, it was like, oh, thank God I'm not doing that anymore. Because even with my husband's now a life coach. So he's always, it's quite funny because we used to go on site and my husband's coaching people.
Wow.
You know,
that's
so
amazing.
Yeah, so already he had that. And because I was in the office working on my own, I didn't really get to express, you know, who I really was deep within. But life is like, Christine, I'm giving you a feather. Christine, all right, it gave you a whole turkey and you still were like, what's going on? But it's because you're resilient. It's because there is something that God, I know you're religious, God,
I am
believes. No, and I love it. But God, I call it great spirit, but God believes that you are. So it gives you for you to be able to serve others with it.
Exactly.
And you know, someone else might look at it and think, oh, the poor girl is suffering. Well, in a way, we're all suffering. But you know, in your case, I think it's because you are. I can't put it in words because it's like you are. I can just say it as that because, you know, and you have what it takes to be you, and you need you in this world.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. That's really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I get it. I get what you're saying too. And I do have a big, I have a big following on social media and stuff. And people encourage me all the time because they say what you're doing, people aren't doing. But that's my courage net. That fuels me as well. And so I have the vulnerability and I have the courage to go out and do more and be more because I'm being attended to, right?
Yep.
And so just by saying that, that encourages me. So thank you.
Yeah. And like, you know, and like my mentor who lives around the corner from you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sat right at him for me. But as he says, as Anthony or Tony Robbins says, your mess becomes your message. Exactly. And you have the right to, not the right, you must share it.
Yes.
You must share your story.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's saying don't keep what you have because like you just said, you've got a huge following, which is fantastic. But whether you help one person or whether you've helped 100,000, I know you'll feel that like I've done my job. I've done what I'm meant to do. I'm serving.
Well, a couple of things. The only reason I say I have a big following now is because I have been so vulnerable with my story and people want to hear that. That's the only reason I have a following at all. The second thing is that Tony, I have a couple like life sayings, which is one, the name of my book, which is Walk Beside Me, because we do need people to walk beside us. But the other thing is there's always purpose in pain, but we do have to choose, right? It's a choice. Share it. But so many people are afraid or they feel unworthy that nobody will listen or people will reject them.
Yes.
But what I can say with confidence is people want to hear your story because they don't want to feel alone. And when you share your journey, that makes other people feel safer about their own suffering. And so you're really helping other people by sharing your own story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just touching on that Walk Beside Me, the book, it's quite funny because I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know the story. And this is how close it is, because I'm going to grab it. This is how close it is, right? But when I looked at this and it said walk beside me, and you've got footprints in the sand.
I love that prayer. Yeah.
I have it right beside me. I have it right. Look at that. I'm not lying. It's there. I don't know if you can see it.
So happy.
Look, I've got a long sleeve top on, but I've just got goosebumps because this one here, this prayer, I've known since I was probably, yes.
Me
and
too.
I've had that since when? I think I was 12 or 13 years old, and I just turned 50 myself. So that's been there. Like I have one here. I have one on my my fridge in the kitchen.
I love it.
I have one in my room, and I use one that I travels when I go into books.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
You know, as a book, because that to me, and that's as soon as I picked up your book, that's exactly what I thought. I saw footprints in the sand.
Amazing. That's so good. That's exactly, that was my idea. That was
wow. Oh, wow. See, I didn't know. I just looked at it and I thought, oh, that's footprints in the sand.
Yeah.
You know, and walk beside me is such a great metaphor.
Thank you.
For God, for people, for family, for friends, you know, for your team, your community. Exactly. You know, so when I read that, I was like, well, that's what it reminds me of. It's like she didn't walk alone.
Right.
She was always held. Like when you were at your, and in the, like, you know, footprints, when you're at your lowest, you are being carried.
Right.
And that's what's always gotten me through as well, because when I think of my lowest, I know that I'm carried.
Yes.
I know there's someone, you know, I always say Great Spirit is guiding me. It's protecting me.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
I love
things
that.
like that. Yeah, absolutely. But is there anything you wanted to touch on? I mean, as I said, I love this book. I love this book. And the link for Amazon will be it'll be attached in the podcast, so people can actually go and purchase it. And
I think one thing that I would like to really hone in on is, you know, when I think about self-esteem and I think about self-love, it's easy to say, right? Okay, I have a great self-esteem now. But it's harder for people to understand that. And so I'll just give you a couple examples. What we listen to in our own head will dictate our self-esteem.
Yeah.
So I can walk around and say, you know what, I'm really not that worthy, and I'm really not that smart, and I'm really not that gifted, and I shouldn't have been on that podcast. Why did she ask me? And why does Fox News want to, it's, you know, that's not me. They don't really know me. Or I can walk around and be like, of course she asked me to be on this podcast because I have value to add. Of course I'm worthy because I know whose I am, right? And all those other things, those are totally different scenarios, but it's the same person. So when it starts from within, and so if we tell ourselves that we are worthy, if we tell ourselves that we are gifted, if we tell ourselves we're knowledgeable, then we will believe that, and our body's listening to us. And so, and I'll give you one step further. Then we have to start listening to what other people are telling us. And so for me, my doctor was telling me that pain in my arm was in my head. And he was telling me that I was making it up and I was a hysterical housewife. Well, I wasn't, but it turns out that there was an infection there. But I was listening to him over myself, and that cost me dearly. And so we have to remember that we have to listen to ourselves first. And then we take that information and we can listen to other people. But if there's people in your life that are tearing you down or pushing you down or not cheering you on, we have to kindly and gently let those people go out of our lives. And the last thing is, I would be very careful about what you listen to in media, on the news, in podcasts, social media, and who you follow makes a big difference with your self-esteem.
Absolutely.
And so if we listen to and we follow people that uplift us, respond to us, give us value, then our self-esteem is going to be built on a day-to-day basis. And I also believe that self-esteem needs to be nurtured every single day. It's like a muscle. You go work out in the gym because you're working on your muscles. You go to school, you read, you play chess, you do activities because you're working on your brain. We have to work on our self-esteem. And so those are the things that I would really hope people would listen to, because had my self-esteem never shifted, I would not be here talking to you today. It's that important. We have to build that foundation.
Absolutely. I agree. Like, honestly, I don't know if you could see me. I was doing this in the background because I agree 10,000%, because that's exactly what I say to people. You know, the thing is, you would never become friends with how your mind talks to you. You would never have that as a friend.
Exactly.
So when I say to people that I stand, and the thing is, when I hear people actually write to me and say, Grace, I did that and it felt so liberating. Yes, it took ages. Like you said, you have to nurture yourself, because you've listened to so much out there telling you you're this, you're not that, you're this, you're in this box, you're not in that box.
Yes.
You go under this category, you go under, and it's so already you've got labels. And I actually really, I mean, like you said, we're both in our 50s now, and thank goodness, in a way, we didn't have social media like they do now, because I fear the younger generation who, unless I lift up my top, I'm not going to get X amount of likes. But if I sit there and I just do this, no one's going to like me. And I think to myself, that is, thank God I didn't have that. But we did already have, like you said, you know, I looked up to supermodels. I looked up to women of power. I looked up to women who had money, and, you know, this is what life is about. I have to have money. I have to have a good body. And I have to be this certain way, because if I'm not, then I'm just a loser. So, you know, you grow up because, like you said, you've got the news that are always throwing it in your face that you're not good enough. Listen to me, I know better than you, things like that, you know. And then you grow up thinking that's who you are, until your inner self, what I call my true self, goes, no. I always say disclaimer, for my journey, I went to Peru and I did some work with shamanic plant medicine work. Really? And while I was in Peru, I get really bad psoriasis because it's humidity.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there scratching that the locals are thinking this girl's face is about to drop off.
Oh, no.
So they were putting creams the same color as my top. So you can see the difference in color. And I would walk around like, you know, with this cream. When I got back home, I cut it all off. My husband said, do you want to cut your hair off? I said, please. And he said, cut it all off. No one knew. Like the people, my immediate family and friends knew I had cancer, but no one else knew. So when they said, oh my goodness, Grace, you cut your hair. And then I would say, oh yeah, I cut it, you know, I cut it all off because it was driving me crazy. And then I'd say, oh, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The judgmental, because it's all of a sudden, you're judged.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't need that, because then your self-esteem gets pushed. Yes. Oh, hang on a minute. I've got short hair now. So, well, I must be dying. I must be getting sick. Yeah, if everyone's thinking short hair or no hair represents you're dying of cancer. Yeah. Oh, well, I must be. Then it gets lowered and lowered to the point where you're looking within to find yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
You know? And then, like you said, the second point that you touched on again is, I say to people, my surgeon, one of the questions, which I'm going to ask you as well, one of the questions and what she said is, get a second opinion. Now, my GP, my local doctor, I said, I want another opinion. And he picked up the phone. He Googled this lady, whether he put best surgeon in Melbourne or I don't know, but he picked up the phone and he rings up, and this lady sees me within a day later. She's so busy. She's well known. She's a well-known breast surgeon here in Australia. But that's the second opinion. And I so agree, because I wasn't sitting right for some reason. When my doctor, the first one, said, this is what I want to do, I'm like, I don't feel right. I didn't feel right.
Right.
So that's why I always say to people, get a second opinion.
Yeah.
And if anything, it was my husband who stopped me from signing the papers from my first surgeon. In Italian, because my husband's Italian, he said to me, Grace, don't sign anything. And I remember looking over to him thinking, which planet are you on? Did you not just
Wow.
hear that she said I had cancer and I've got to do this? I've got to, because she wanted to do what they call an auxiliary clearance of my lymph nodes. That's where they take all your lymph
I
nodes
know.
away. Yeah, yeah.
I know.
So I didn't need that unless it's
Wow.
necessary.
Of course.
So things like this, you know,
Yes.
and I'm looking at him thinking, have you lost your mind?
Good
But
for
it
him.
was the biggest, exactly. It
Good
was,
for him.
he pulled me back and
Which
went,
is your
wait,
cheerleader. Yeah.
wait.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying to people to wait, but I always say pull back. You know, and that's what I say. And like yourself, I'm sure you do too, where you say to people, okay, all right, just take a step back, breathe,
Yeah.
and look at it. Now, you have more experience than
No,
I
I
have, you know?
Yeah.
So for you, it's,
Yeah.
you would see if someone ever was to approach you, whether it's someone in your inner circle or whether it's someone on social media, they would approach you, you would see where it's something like, you know what, I think this person needs to look at this way, or yeah, you know what, and it's not your saying, oh, look, do it my way, because it's the best way, but you can say, guys, don't go through 10 years or 20 years of this. Or it's been 10 years since your operation now, hasn't it? More than 10 years?
It's been 10 years. Exactly.
Yeah. So you've had that experience, you know what I mean? And you're sort of going, guys, I've been there, I've done that.
Right.
So what I could do now is I can show you this path.
Learn from my error.
Learn from, yes. So I really like how you said that, because the self-esteem is definite.
Critical.
So you know what I mean? But it takes time. It takes belief. And when you find your true self, like you do, like you can say no.
Yes.
Like the word no is amazing.
Exactly.
Feels so good to go, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I send you love, but you know, no.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you know, the thing is is there anything else you wanted to touch on or you wanted to mention?
I think I'm good. I'm very thankful that we were able to share our stories today. It's always a privilege. Always.
Thank you. And it's an honor for me, honestly. Like I said to my husband, I said, I'm so nervous. But I'll ask you the final question. If there was 3 questions you can think of any woman should ask their doctor, what would they be?
Well, I think the most important now, I look back, I'm like, why didn't I ask this? I think when you are making your decisions on treatment, ask your doctor what the side effects are going forward. And so, for instance, I've had a lot of really major side effects to the chemo that I had 8 years ago. So I lost 3 teeth after chemotherapy. I have liver damage, not a lot, but a little. And I have a heart issue because of it. And I also had some issues with my eyes. And so when I was presented with chemo, of course, they don't tell you any of this. And so if I had to go back, I would say to my doctor, okay, what are the long-term side effects of this amount of chemotherapy? And you know what? I probably would have said to them after like 6 months, I think we're good. And so that's a good question to ask. And that was one. So ask your doctor. So I guess the second one would be to ask your doctor, like, you know, if there's a support network within the community that he serves. And I think that's really important, because when I was going through cancer, there was not a community, and my friends were great. And don't get me wrong, I would never dismiss what they did for me, but none of them had been through it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a community within the breast cancer community, which is also why I like to be a breast cancer advocate, because I want to be accessible to people. So that would be the second question. Is there a breast cancer community within this hospital, within this medical system? And the third question I would ask is are there nurses? Is there a foundation here where we can have like emotional support? Because a lot of times, well, I don't know one person that hasn't dealt with emotional trauma after being diagnosed, but a lot of medical hospitals, a lot of medical groups have therapists and stuff that they will give you as a service. And so I didn't have that either. And I wish that I had. And so those are the three questions I would ask.
Yeah, wow. And it's so important, like you said, because, speaking to other women who have gone through that, they tell me themselves, they say, oh yeah, they call it fog brain, chemo brain, they forget things, or all these other side effects that they don't tell you about.
Exactly.
And like you said, and that support system, because when I look at, and again, I didn't need to have them for my case, but I know it's out there. And Dr. Chantal, who's my surgeon, Dr. Chantal Thornton, she actually is big. And I'm so grateful because I finally found someone in that field, not like us coming from this side, but she's in the field. And she's all about dieting, exercising, moving. Yeah, she wants women to come in here strong, but strong for themselves, because one thing she actually did tell me, which is in my podcast, was women who get operated, who was highly stressed, when they're getting the lumpectomy done or something else, there is a higher chance of the cancer spreading if they're stressed. And I thought, oh my God, I never knew that.
Right.
I never knew that. So she's saying that a lot of doctors actually prescribe their patients like high blood pressure tablets to keep things like mellow.
Yeah.
So while they get operated, and I thought, isn't it crazy? Because she was saying that people I get it. You're fearful, you're scared, you're highly strung, but now I hear it from you. And that's why the world needs more people like yourself, because like you said, you're an advocate. You've been through it.
Right. Thank you.
You've done that. You've been through that. So I really, really, really appreciate having you on. Is there another book coming out?
There is. It's a sequel.
Yes.
I am publishing it this fall, so I will definitely let you know.
Absolutely. And I did hear a little rumor, or it wasn't a rumor because it came out of your mouth, so I won't call it a rumor, but I heard that there's a possibility, or it is in the making, that they're making a movie of your book.
They are. Yeah, they are making it. It's been in the works for 3 years, and they were supposed to start filming right when COVID happened. And so it's been pushed away a little bit, but yeah, there is a film. It's coming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
It's called Willow, the feature film. So it's the main character's name, Willow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll be on the lookout for that.
Oh my, definitely. Don't worry, I'll be in touch with you. But the thing is, because again, it's a blessing. Yeah. Like I was saying before, these are your blessings.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to go through this to find your blessings, to see your blessings.
Well, to be honest with you, I actually, when I go through these different stages of my life, since I've published the book, I will pick up my book and I will encourage myself, and I use my own book to do it.
Wow.
And I say to myself, remember how this, or remember that. And I use it as a tool for my own self.
So on that note, I am forever grateful, and I am honored. I am so honored to have had you on my podcast. I can't wait to get the new book. I follow you all the time, and I watch you, and
thank you.
I just wish you the best and so much goodness, so much amazing life ahead. I know you're a mother, and I wish all of the best.
Thank you.
Also with your children and with your life in general. And I am jealous you live in Miami, but I won't hold that against you. But thank you again so much for being on my podcast.
Well,
did you want to have you got anything to say?
Well, I one of my best things that I always tell myself is let go and let God. And when I did, when I let go and let God, then God really showed me what my path was. And that's changed my life. So whatever that means to you, just let it go, let it happen.
Absolutely. There are things that you can't control. And again, that's another prayer, the serenity prayer.
Exactly.
So I really appreciate everything. And if you do end up having this beautiful movie come out and there's a premiere in Australia, make sure you come out.
I will, for sure.
Or if you want to come to Australia, come and visit me.
I will. Okay. Thank you. Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.
Thank you so much. Much love. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.